What is up guys, Media Review Mike here. So today I thought we'd take a little break from the Geometry Dash content, and instead we'd talk about something else that I like, Total Drama. Now, I think like most people who grew up watching this show, I was probably too young to be watching it, but that doesn't matter because this show is fantastic. And because I am the king of beating dead horses, I thought it would be fun if we did this in a tier list. So I will be ranking all of the seasons, bar this one. Probably won't talk for very long about this one. Let's jump into it, shall we? Okay, so first up we have Total Drama Island. Gee, I wonder where this one's going. It's just an amazing season. It's the one that started it all, introduces some of the greatest characters in this show. It's just an amazing season. Like, if you haven't watched it, what are you even doing here? I don't think this will be a very controversial placing. It's such an amazing concept, a parody of Survivor. It's such a simple idea, but it's done so well. So many amazing characters: Heather, Duncan, Courtney, Gwen, Lindsay, I guess, you know, Lashana, Bridget, who am I forgetting? Izzy, Owen, Jeff, DJ. Oh, such a great show. Such a great show. Great. It's a great season. I think the most interesting thing about this season, however, is the censorship that it is quite famous for having when being localized from Canada to America. See, here in Australia, we didn't cop any of these censors, so we got to hear all the fricks and craps, but over in America, apparently the show was a little too PG for them, so they had to, get rid of some of the raunchier things. And by raunchy, I mean they kept all of the sexually explicit material. They just changed all the characters from saying morons to saying fools. Can't have the kids hearing the word moron. I think my favorite example of this is when Gwen's pants get ripped and everyone can see her underwear, but they changed the line where she responds to this like revelation that she is now showing her butt to many people on TV, and she goes crap, which I think is a fairly understated reaction, but they changed that line to oh man in the American version.
Won the first challenge.
Yeah! Crap!
First challenge.
Yeah! Man.
But they still keep her pants being ripped. It's just so dumb. Like, why would you keep that? And they keep the scene where Heather flashes her boobs to Harold, but they change Lashana's reaction from saying whose boobs did you see to whose chest did you see.
Wait a sec. So, Harold saw your boobies? Wait a sec. So, Harold saw your chest?
Wait a minute. Whose boobies did you see? Wait a minute. Whose chest did you see?
Like, no one talks like that. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. But it's a good thing I grew up in Australia because we didn't have to have all those dumb censors. And I got whiplash when I tried watching the show on Netflix for the first time. And the moment I realized something was wrong was when Harold said, "Does this mean that the show takes place on a lame summer camp instead of saying a crappy summer camp?" And I was like, you can't change that line. It's sacred. It's an amazing season though. And so next we have Total Drama Action, which is the follow-up season. And I will put that in neutral. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this season. It's just Total Drama Island, but less edgy, with a weirder premise and less interesting characters, if you ask me. I think some of the highlights were bringing Courtney back halfway through the season, making her a villain. That worked pretty well. I think that having Justin be a character was pretty cool. Making Beth a finalist and in my country the winner was really dumb. Duncan deserves to win, and I think it is the only victory that, the canonical Canadian ending has, that I think that the American version or the alternative ending is actually better. Duncan beating Beth just works significantly more than Beth beating Duncan. Like, no, Beth is not beating Duncan. It's very silly. Honestly, I think that Lindsay probably should have taken Beth's place in the final two. She got a lot more character development than Beth did, and I think that she was booted not too early, but she definitely could have gone on for longer, and I think it would have made more sense to have her be in the final two. I just think that it's kind of weird that the writers thought, okay, so we've done a Survivor parody that takes place on a summer camp. Let's do films next? And I don't know, it's just weird because Total Drama Island in its own sort of universe isn't a parody of anything. It's just a show that exists in that universe. But when you strip away the context of being a show that exists inside some other cartoon universe, and you look at it from our perspective as real people, we have the context of knowing that Survivor exists, and we can see that it's obviously making fun of the tropes, and it's making a parody of it. With Total Drama Action, it's playing on film tropes that do exist in the real world, but apparently also exist in this fictional world, and it strips away a lot of the parody aspect. It's not really a parody as much as it is just making fun of the cliches of films. Again, I don't dislike this season. It's still fine, but the jokes aren't quite as funny in my opinion. I think Justin, while it's good that they gave him character development, was a weird choice to make a villain, at least for the first half of the season. And also bringing Owen back in the final stint, while I'm happy he's back because he was very unfairly booted, it didn't make much sense. And bringing him back to be a mole, it really didn't work. So that's Total Drama Action. And now for its superior older brother, World Tour. Now, I have a few major issues with this season, but I think in general, the highs of this season are significantly better than the high moments in Action. Likewise, I think that the low moments are significantly worse than the low moments in Action. I'll get the negatives out of the way first, because there are a lot of them. Sierra being the main issue. This is kind of controversial, I think, and it's a bit of a touchy subject, but the way they used Sierra for comedic relief is kind of disgusting, in my opinion. I'm not usually the kind of person who gets caught up in getting mad about jokes. I genuinely feel anything can be joked about as long as it's done correctly. I am the last person you will hear try to police comedy, but these jokes are just not funny. They're really gross, in my opinion. I think, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, Sierra is this stalker character who's in love with this really minor character from season 1, which is kind of a funny premise, you know, it's parodying superfans, or stans, as we know them as. You know, taking this really niche character that didn't even make it very far in the first season and having someone be completely in love with him. However, they take it really far with some of the things she does. I think by far the lowest moment for me was when she uses love tea to force him into loving her. Of course, it doesn't work because he's allergic and because she's insane. But it's really weird. Then, of course, there's that wonderful line where she says that she's always fantasized about seeing him shirtless, which is great.
Oh my gosh, Cody! I've dreamt of this moment, only you weren't wearing a shirt.
Whoa, hey!
I really hate Sierra. I know a lot of people think she's funny. I just can't stand her. I think she's gross, and I think that she is basically just a representation of what's wrong with how, like, these issues that men do face. Like, it happens. This sort of thing, obviously it's more common with girls, but it does still happen to men. You know, this is obviously taken to the extreme, but it's still really weird. And a lot of people dislike this argument. I've seen people get really angry when this argument is made, and I believe that that's because these people are dishonest, because they're hypocrites, but a lot of people seem to object to the argument of, well, if the roles were reversed, you would take issue with it. And I completely agree with that argument. If the roles were reversed, if Cody was a woman and if Sierra was a man, people would rightfully take issue with it, because it's gross. It's gross. Sorry, that got a little bit moral outragey, and yeah, it doesn't get much better with the Courtney, Duncan, Gwen love triangle. That was also handled really badly, and I just don't know why. It was set up in Action, and then they just sort of forget about it for the first half of the season, and then when they remember it, Courtney just starts throwing challenges to get Gwen kicked off. It feels really out of character having Duncan cheat on Courtney because, you know, he's a punk, he's a criminal, but he genuinely liked Courtney as far as we could tell. I mean, it's not even that just he thought that she was hot, like he genuinely seemed to care about her. You know, he held a grudge against Harold for all of Action for getting Courtney unfairly kicked off, which is another thing I don't really like about Total Drama Island. Courtney and Lashana's exits, terrible. They're absolutely terrible. Courtney's is unfair and Lashana's is a joke. It's appallingly handled. But we're not talking about Island right now, we're talking about World Tour. I did say that I liked things about this season, didn't I? So let's talk about those. Alejandro is one of the greatest additions to this series ever. I think that the idea of having this like charming sort of idol to all of the women that they all fall in love with, and then he uses that to like manipulate them into failing their challenges, I think that was really smart. And I think that it was also really smart having Heather and Alejandro have a thing that they denied for most of the season, but ended up being extremely important in the finale. I also really liked the World Tour aspect as a whole. I thought that was really interesting, a direction to take after Island. Honestly, I'd be happy to just skip Action, because Action's never really acknowledged, like, ever. Duncan never sort of talks about the fact that he's a millionaire in half of, you know, the world. At least, like, with Gwen and Owen, they never actually got their money. But in Action, Duncan or Beth is meant to be a millionaire. And it makes sense with the timeline where Beth wins, because she's not in the show. So it makes perfect sense that she's off spending her money doing whatever she's doing. But with Duncan, what the hell's he doing here? He doesn't need another $1 million. He's set for life, especially seeing he's dating Courtney. She's gonna be a lawyer. Like, his million plus Courtney becoming a lawyer, he would never need to work again. Also, obviously the show has the musical aspect to it, and I think that the songs are overall pretty good. There are none that I found myself skipping. I think the only one I skipped was the one from the Aftermath where Harold sings about how hot Lashana is. I did skip that one because I don't like that one very much. And there are some that I like more than others. I think Rocking It Hawaiian Style's really good. The one from the final episode's pretty good. New York. The London one, Stripping the Guard, that one's pretty funny. Come Fly With Us, it's great. Yeah, those are just the ones that come to the top of my head. And some of the weaker ones, probably the Amazon song, Stuck to a Pole, the German one, basically all the Aftermath songs. Oh, Her Real Name Isn't Blatantly, that's a pretty good one as well. That's pretty underrated. Oh, and that's another thing I forgot to mention about Action as well, the Aftermath specials. They're significantly better here than they are in Action. In Action, they turn Jeff into like this egotistical maniac, and that's really toned down in this season. It's not completely gone, but it's significantly toned down, and it makes him far more likable, because Jeff is meant to be like the chill surfer dude, and then in Action, he's just like a psychopath. He's like worse than Chris, debatably. That's another thing. Chris gets progressively more sadistic as this show goes on, and I think this is the first season where it becomes extremely noticeable that, like, this is not the same character from Island. I don't hate him in this, but this is definitely where I find Chris becomes less endearing and is more just sort of a psychopath. Speaking of Revenge of the Island, this is an interesting one because a lot of people don't like this season. But I do. I very much like this season, in fact. I think that most of the characters are really good, some highlights being Dawn, Lightning, Cameron, Scott's fairly okay antagonist, definitely not as good as Heather or Alejandro or even Justin, really, but, you know, he serves his purpose. B is also great, and, you know, the whole Mike having dissociative identity disorder is not handled very good at all, in fact, but I don't really hold that against the show because it came out in like 2011, and so yeah, it makes sense that it's a little bit dated in that fact. I think the only character that I don't like is Stacy, but like she's kicked off in the first episode, so who cares? And the only other character I don't really like is Jo, but that's only because she reminds me of a person I actually know, both in like how she looks and how she talks. and I don't like that person in real life, so that's not really a fair reason to dislike her. And I also think that the idea of having the challenges being sort of toxic waste themed because Chris rented it out to a nice family-oriented toxic waste disposal company, I think that was really smart. I know a lot of people think that that's dumb because it makes Chris overly sadistic and it doesn't make sense that he's this evil, but I think it's funny. I don't care. I think it's funny. And also there's no Sierra, which is great. In terms of the finale, I definitely think Cameron wins in my sort of opinion. It's definitely what happened in my my country. But I don't dislike Lightning, and I'm sure if Lightning's ending aired, I wouldn't be like too upset. Maybe when I was younger, but now I like Lightning as well. And also Lightning thinking that Joe is a guy throughout the entire season is pretty funny. And now we get to Oh, isn't this an interesting one? So here we have Turtle Drama All Stars. And okay. I used to really like this one when I was a little babby, and that's because I didn't get to see all of it. I only got to see certain episodes. And all I really remembered about it was characters I liked from Revenge of the Island and characters I liked from all the previous seasons in one season. That was epic. But yeah, no, this show sucks. It's really bad. In terms of what my least favorite thing is, I don't know. Probably, everything. I think that the heroes versus villains thing is a conceptually broken idea because what works about the previous seasons is you've got pretty scummy people and pretty normal people and you mash them together and you force them to work in a team. But in this, it's just the rule of two from Star Wars, all the villains fighting over power and killing each other. And then on the good side, you've got nothing. You've got Courtney being a bit mean, and that's it. But yeah, the whole friendship with Gwen and Courtney, that gets resolved way too quickly, and once they do become friends again, it's really forced. And then Chris is just like, no, you guys aren't friends anymore. And then they're like, no, we're not. We hate each other again. And then, not even 5 minutes later, they're like, yeah, no, we're friends again. Alejandro was completely wasted. Heather was kind of wasted. All of the villains were wasted. Duncan got neutered to hell and back. What actually happened? Did they just forget how to write characters in this season? And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, which is Mal, who is the secret evil personality of Mike. And again, this is a really dumb way of doing it. Yeah, no, it's not handled well. It's annoying. It doesn't make any sense that Zoe can't see through it. Or Cameron, for that matter. Oh yeah, Sierra's back in this, and now she's thirsting over Cameron because Cody's missing. Great. And this is also an All-Stars season that has a clear lack of All-Stars in it. There's no Owen, there's no Beth, who were both finalists. I've heard that they couldn't get Owen's voice actor to do a whole season, but I guess they could get him to cameo in the final episode, that's fine. Lindsay being here doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. They probably should have just replaced her with Beth. She would have been out of place and probably kicked off immediately, which would have worked, but at least it'd make sense. Apparently they were gonna have Brick back, which would have been nice because I actually like Brick, and just... there are so many characters that they could have added to this season that they just didn't. Even having Ezekiel would be funny. That would be an interesting way to do it. I remember when I was a kid, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if they, made Ezekiel wear, this collar or something that, forced him into being normal. That could have been interesting. Even my deluded fan fictions at, however old I was when I watched this, even I can write a better story than that. Even little babby Mike can write a better story than that. So yeah, Turtle Drama All Stars, not very good. And the only thing that's worse than it is Pacatao Island. Even when I was younger, I knew this was terrible compared to the other seasons. And I was really, really easy to please back then, I liked basically all of these equally. But even when I was younger, I didn't like Pacatao nearly as much as the rest of them. I still liked it, but I don't now. I don't know which I dislike more though, All Stars or Pacatao. I mean, technically they're the same season, but just like split in half. It's like season 5 part A and season 5 part B. Pahkitew has worse writing, Chris is at his all-time lowest, and basically everything about it sucks. But there are also some interesting concepts there, like having the artificial island, and they should have just made that explicit from like day one, and it would have been really interesting. All the new characters are terrible, none of them are interesting. Even characters that people generally like Jasmine and Sean, aren't even that good. Like if they were put into the original Total Drama or even Revenge of the Island, they would be like tertiary characters at best. But with All Stars, it's not as bad from a challenge perspective, but it butchers otherwise really good characters, so it has that going for it. So I don't know which I dislike more, but Pahkitew is terrible. I think some highlights as to characters I really particularly hate are Leonard, the LARPer, what is his name, Max, the Dr. Evil guy. Scarlet is fine up until she just takes her glasses off, which makes her eyes turn red and hair stick up, and she goes, "I am an evil character," and she basically just exposits to the audience that she was evil all along. And it's not even done as a parody. It's not like they're making fun of these tropes like Syndrome from The Incredibles, for example. No, they're just like genuinely forgetting how to write good characters. It's ridiculous. And of course, we've got Total Drama Presents The Ridonkulous Race, and finally we have something that comes slightly close to my love of Total Drama Island. This season is, I think, the most bingeable because it takes place it's a very fast-paced show, I find. There are only like a couple of teams that got on my nerves. I think that Dwayne and Dwayne Jr., they were annoying. I felt the Rockers, they were frustrating. I get that was the point, but I still found them annoying, so that doesn't really mean anything. I remember not liking the Datas when I was younger, but I actually really like them now. Well, I like Ryan. What's the other one's name? Like Stephanie? Stephanie is like a psychopath, and at least this time around, you know, she doesn't get away with it. But also, they kind of do, because they get back together. I don't really know what that's about, but you know, at least they acknowledge that it's probably not gonna last. Yeah, it's weird. And like Ryan is just in the right basically every single time. Like, yeah, Stephanie is the abusive one in that relationship, which almost feels like an apology to how terrible Sierra was, because they actually acknowledge it in this season and they go, yeah, no, they shouldn't be together. That's toxic. And yeah, that's significantly better. Obviously the LARPers are terrible, but they're gone day one, so it's fine. The vegans were kind of annoying, especially the one that actually ended up eating meat. That was just okay. That, like, of all of the jokes you could make at the expense of vegans, they really held back, and I don't know why they did that, because this was what, like 2016, 2017? This was peak making fun of vegans. And so yeah, Ridonkulous Race is pretty good. I significantly preferred Don, the host, to Chris from Revenge onwards, because he's normal, but he's still got that cynicism to him that makes him likable and charming, much like Chris did. And yeah, it just overall, it's a really interesting concept. It's a parody of a newer show, so that the whole Survivor parody is kind of gone, but now it's a parody of The Amazing Race, which is cool. And then of course there's Total Dramarama, but I've only seen the first episode or two, and yeah, no, I'm not sitting through 3 seasons of Total Dramarama just to give my opinion on it. It sucks. Then of course there is the light at the end of the tunnel, because we are getting 2 new seasons of Total Drama, ladies and gentlemen. This is very exciting. Also, it's not, because apparently there's going to be like TikToks involved, but hopefully the writers are actually good at writing, and they can make jokes at the expense of TikTok without sounding like boomers. I can only dream. I am genuinely excited for the new season. I think that because there's basically a generation's difference between the 16-year-olds of 2007 and the 16-year-olds of current year, it makes perfect sense to sort of revamp the show. Not a complete reboot, but a revamp. And it would be nice if we even got to see some of some legacy characters, but all grown up, almost like a middle finger to Total Dramarama. And while yes, I would like it if they just brought older characters back, if they did All-Stars but good this time, that would be nice, but, you know, I think that it can be interesting, and at the end of the day, I genuinely don't see it being worse than Paketeo Island or Total Dramarama. Might be worse than All-Stars. I think that I probably dislike All-Stars less than Paketeo Island. Also, forgot to mention Dave in Paketeo Island. He sucks, but everybody thinks that, so it's kind of redundant to say. So that's my list. We've got number 1, Total Drama, then the Ridonkulous Race, then World Tour, then Revenge, then Action, then All-Stars, then Paketeo, and Total Dramarama doesn't actually exist. I've been pranking you. Every time I've referenced it, it's just a psyop. It doesn't actually exist. If you disagree with this list, you're actually objectively wrong. I actually have a certificate that says this is the objective correct ranking, so suck it. Okay, so now I've got a take for the censored version. I'm actually going to be posting 2 videos. I'm going to have this version that will air in Canada and Australia, and I'm going to have a censored version that will air everywhere else. So if you disagreed with my opinion, you're actually incorrect. I have a certificate that proves that this is the factual ranking for these seasons. So, shove it. Is that better than suck it? That's probably better than suck it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like. And as always, this is Media Review Mike, signing out.